Minister, the Prime Minister wouldn't concede yesterday that the new medical transfer laws only apply to the 1,000 people currently on Manus and Nauru. Will you acknowledge that basic fact?
Well, this is one of the ludicrous parts of Labor's policy, what they've done here. Labor is saying that they wanted to get people off Nauru who weren't getting medical treatment. Of course, there are 64 doctors on Nauru.
Well, not 64 doctors, 64 medical personnel. Many of them are nurses.
And they're servicing several hundred asylum seekers who haven't been given refugee status in Australia. So they are obviously getting medical attention. The idea that we would put people on Nauru and not give them medical attention is, quite frankly, deeply offensive. So Labor says that we need to get those people off and bring them to Australia. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
But if you're a new asylum seeker, apparently you don't need to get medical attention under the Labor Party's policy. They say it doesn't apply to new asylum seekers. So
well, that's what the law says. That's what the law does.
But what's the principle here? What is Labor? If Labor thinks that asylum seekers need to get medical attention in Australia for, say, mental illness, why wouldn't that apply to everyone coming to Australia?
Okay, but do you accept
already in Nauru?
But do you accept that that's what the law says? The law says only the cohort that are currently on Manus and Nauru will be able to come to the mainland if doctors refer them.
I think it's an irrelevant point.
But it's the law.
I think it's an irrelevant point.
Why is the law irrelevant?
I think it's irrelevant because what's actually happened here is that Labor wants to escape the fact that they have weakened our border protection regime, but by trying to create these red herrings that make people focus on something other than the central fact, which is that Labor's changed our border protection laws to weaken them. And that was the advice from ASIO, from ASD, from ACIS, that this change would weaken our laws, and they ignored that security advice, and now they're trying to create some red herring.
Let's get the facts here. That advice from ASIO was before this change, this amendment was put in. Bill Shorten came up with this amendment after he had the briefing on security arrangements, and the law that is passed is that these transfers only apply to the people currently on Manus Island and Nauru. Do you accept that is the law?
It's a mere
It's
technicality.
not a red herring,
it's a mere
law.
technicality.
Why?
Because what Labor's trying to do is pretend that they can be half pregnant. Now, apparently, they were so concerned about people on Nauru and their medical attention that they had to change the law and vote against the government. But apparently that's not good enough for new asylum seekers. Now, what's the principle there? Now, Labor's either principled or they're not.
Why isn't the government, if it wants to discourage the votes, why isn't the government trumpeting this saying... the boat, sorry. Why isn't the government trumpeting this to the region and saying, if you come here, these laws don't apply to you? Why are you doing the opposite?
We're not doing anything other than pointing out the fact that Labor, if they become the government, will weaken our border protection laws. They've already done it yesterday or 2 days ago. That's what they want to do. And if they get elected, that's the future, is weak border protection. Whereas under the Liberal Party, we stopped.
Minister, just saying
the votes.
it,
under Labor, they want to bring them back again.
I had to say this to another minister yesterday, just saying it doesn't make it true. Isn't it the government, not the laws themselves, that is encouraging the boats to start up again?
Oh, for goodness sake. Fran, you can't possibly now try and argue, not you, but the Labor Party, can't possibly argue that actually it's the coalition that's weakening our border protection. We didn't bring in legislation to weaken the border protection. The Labor Party and Karen Phelps and the crossbenchers did. And now it's the most remarkable twist that they want to pretend that somehow it's the government that is hanging out the welcome sign to the people smugglers. We've stopped the boats. We've closed 19 detention centres. We've got 8,000 children out of detention. Labor is starting that up again and now trying to somehow blame the Morrison government. It's farcical.
We should be clear, nothing has started up again yet, but why are you reopening Christmas Island? Who will be sent there?
Possibly some of the people that will be medivaced out of Nauru.
Why would they be in Christmas Island if they're coming for medical treatment?
Because some of them are very dangerous.
So they'll be in Christmas Island and then get their medical treatment where? Perth?
We'll have to supply the medical treatment in Christmas Island. It'll be very, very expensive. That's why the security agencies said it would cost $1.4 billion. So Labor,
why wouldn't you put them in detention centres on the mainland?
We're all going back to the horror of the Labor Party government when they started up the people smuggling trade again, costing billions and billions of dollars. We're opening up Christmas Island again because there are very dangerous people on Nauru who have not been able to get to Australia. And if they can get themselves here, and there's some of those people are amongst the 300 that activists are already saying need to come here, then they'll be going to Christmas Island. Some will come to Australia, some will come to Christmas Island. What we're heralding here again is the horror of Labor on border protection.
But what you're saying here again by saying these very dangerous people are coming, I mean, there's a specific part of this bill that says the minister has discretion to stop, quote, very dangerous people coming to this country.
And that will be
people who have broken the
justiciable.
law.
And that will be justiciable. So if that goes to the independent...
It's justiciable now. I mean, there's already people coming here because they're challenging the government's decision not to let them have access to treatment through the courts.
Under the IHAP, the Independent Health Panel, they will be able to say they disagree with the minister's discretion, and that will become a court matter, and we will be paying tens of millions of dollars of Australian taxpayers' money in the court system for those people. But we're opening up a new front, Fran. Why is it good to open up a new front?
No, but
I mean, we've actually stopped the people dying at sea,
the law says
coming
the
here
minister
on boats.
Has the power to stop people coming if they are of bad character, or if they are a threat, or if they have a serious criminal
and now
charge.
There's a new front opened that will make that justiciable and tie us up in the courts for years. I mean, that's why the security agencies advised us it was weakening the border protection regime. Now, I don't really want... I'm the Minister for Defence. I don't want defence platforms in Northern Australia fishing people out of the water again who are dead because of Labor reopening the boats. I want them focusing on protecting Australia from other challenges.
On that, is there going to be increased border patrols, intelligence gathering? Have the patrol boats been sent out? Have the Orion aircraft been sent up? Did these patrols ever stop? I mean, that's the ring of steel we already have out there, isn't there, in turnbacks? Obviously,
with the threat diminishing because of the government's strong border protection regime, we have been able to do less of the ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance Collection, less of placing platforms in our northern reaches against people smugglers, and obviously because of Labor weakening our border protection regime, we will have to do more. It's axiomatic.
If the government is so alarmed about the impact of this law, which passed this week, on border security, why aren't we having a snap election so a re-elected coalition government could overturn the laws as quickly as possible? Because that's the promise from the PM.
Well, the election's in May, and just because Labor and the crossbenchers are naive and dangerous enough to change the laws, and in Labor's case,
urgent,
reckless
isn't it?
enough.
I mean, you're saying it's urgent.
Oh, so you think because Labor and the crossbenchers are either naive or reckless, we should have an election?
Well, I think if the government's so worried about our national security...
We have an election in May. We are taking the necessary actions to protect our borders because of Labor's recklessness. And what Labor has highlighted is that they are not ready or fit for government. They've learnt nothing from the time they were in government before. You're listening to RM Breakfast. It's 7:45. Our guest is the Manager of Government Business, the Manager of the Government in the House, Christopher Pyne. He's also Australia's Defence Minister. Christopher Pyne, in a sense, this bill is a byproduct of the Coalition's decision to dump Malcolm Turnbull as PM, isn't it? If that hadn't happened, there wouldn't have been a Wentworth by-election. There'd be no Karen Phelps with this medical transfer bill. It was her initiative. There wouldn't be Julia Banks moving to the cross-bench, which delivered the final vote needed to pass the bill. The government brought this policy change on itself, didn't it? Well, that's democracy, and the reality is that the voters of Wentworth and Chisholm, or Flinders now in the case of Julia Banks, who's running for Flinders, and Indi, quite frankly, which is also a coalition seat, they sat there voting with Labor to undermine border protection. Labor did it because they wanted to have a political win, and I hope the voters in those seats will not reward Karen Phelps, Julia Banks, and re-elect a coalition member in Indi. Christopher Pyne, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure.